The following is a Terry Wyce production. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Welcome to Wyce Thoughts. I am so glad you decided to tune in today for this episode of the show. It'll be time well spent as we gather around the virtual campfire. And for more episodes of Wyce Thoughts, make sure you visit my website, wycethoughts.com. Just make sure you spell my name right. W-Y-C-E, wycethoughts.com. And if you want to check out my YouTube channel, it's Wyce Thoughts on YouTube. You can tweet at me on Twitter, or as it is better known now as X, just look for @Terry Wyce on Twitter, or X, or whatever you prefer to call it nowadays. Well, let's get into the podcast, shall we? By the way, if you want to email me, it's mail, M-A-I-L, mail at wycethoughts.com. All right, on with today's show. So, welcome one and all. Welcome to another episode of Wyce Thoughts. I am Terry Wyce, and I'm so glad you decided to join me today. Having some technical fun in the studio today, as I don't know. I think I got a bad input on one of the boards here because I had to go into the alternate mic input, and I went, ugh. Here I'm thinking it's the cord, it's the microphone. I'm just doing all this stuff, and I said, you know what? I'm going to put it in input number 2. And we're going to see what the heck happens. And lo and behold, guess what? Yeah, it worked. So thankfully for that. So how are you? How are things moving along today for you? I hope well. I hope everyone is well. I hope your family's well. I hope all is good in your world. And so what do we want to do as we sit and gather around what I like to call the virtual campfire here on Wyce Thoughts? So what I want to talk about is, I just got done, first let me start off with, I just got done watching probably one of the most violent television shows I have ever seen in my life. And I know what you're thinking out there right away. You're thinking, oh my God, you watched The Sopranos? No. Oh. Did you watch, what was that one with the Steven Spielberg, the Brothers in Arms or whatever it was? No. Really? No. Okay. Television show? No. And this was one that was on a cable network, mind you. A cable network it was on. And I watched its initial program quite a few years ago, and this was a spin-off series from said television series. And it was probably one of the most violent television series I've ever seen. I'm like, wow, they were running this on cable TV. Granted, at 10 o'clock at night was its normal airtime. I finished watching it on Hulu. But it was called Mayans MC. It was the spin-off show, if you were, from Sons of Anarchy. Now, Sons of Anarchy was a pretty violent show back in its day. But it was a very good show. It was about a motorcycle club in California and the ins and outs. It was almost like a modern-day kind of Sopranos type of thing. And it had some violence in it and some wow moments, you know. However, Mayans took it to a whole nother level. I mean, I was watching the last season. It went through 5 seasons, and it is now done. It is ended. And the last season, I mean, they just kept ramping up the violence, and sometimes I don't know if they did it for violence sake or the shock factor, because the story just started kind of spinning off in odd directions, at least to me. I don't know if any of you have watched Mayans or, you know, watched The Sons of Anarchy and then watched Mayans, but it was at some point the entertainment factor left for me. And I was like, okay, this is kind of getting to be like, at that point, I guess I was vested in it, and I wanted to just finish it out and say, okay, I completed watching this. So let's see how they're going to end the series. And let's go from there. And so that's what I did. Is I ended up watching the end of Mayans, and boy, I'll tell you, the last few episodes, like 4 or 5 episodes, was like, holy crap, man! I couldn't believe that they. It was just, I mean, blood and gore and just crazy stuff. And I don't know. Maybe I'm getting softer in my old age. I don't know. But if you've watched Mayans, or if you watched The Sons of Anarchy, or if you have comments about maybe the violence that we're being exposed to on the television nowadays, leave a comment down in the comments section at the website at wycethoughts.com under this episode. I'll see about putting a reference to the link for it, and I believe it's on Hulu now that you can watch all the seasons of it if you have Hulu. But wow, was that ever violent? Holy moly guacamole, man! It was just something else. But that being said, I finished it, and another one under my belt. I did some light binge watching on that one. Nothing too crazy or out of the ordinary. But anyway, how are you? I think I've asked that a half dozen times. I hope you're good. What else is going on? Well, summer is in full swing, so that's a nice thing. We are really into the throes of summer at this point, and hope you're enjoying your summer. There's a lot of talk on the national news and other places about the unprecedented heat. I don't know if I can agree with that statement. I've been through heat waves, folks, here in the northeastern United States. I remember back in the early to mid-'90s where, up New York way in the continental United States, where we had heat where it was 95, 96 during the day, and it felt like over 100 for like 10 to 12 days and beyond. And, mind you, in the evening when it was supposed to, be cooler, it didn't get down below like 80 degrees, 80, 81, 82 degrees at night with, if you are lucky, a light breeze. There was really nobody running around that the sky was falling and the world was ending. And here, I must digress. We've had a few hot days, but the other day here up in New York State Way, a few days ago before I recorded this episode of the podcast of Wyce Thoughts, they sent out an alert from our governor, advising us to cut down on our usage for power during the day. And this is coming from a state that wants to go all electric, okay? They want to go all electric in this state, which I find really amusing. And you can't even handle what's going on now. And this was like for a day. I mean, this wasn't even like we were having multiple days of high heat. This was one day it was going to be like 89, I think, with a heat index into the 90s. And it was dropping that evening right down to like 72 or 73 degrees. And I just sat there and I literally shook my head when I got that alert and said, really? You want to, procure or restrict people's energy use, and you want to, meanwhile, transfer this whole state to electric in the next 5 years, this big political push? I just had to sit back and literally shake my head and laugh and chuckle and tell my wife, "I get a load of this. Get a load of this." No. And she had some words which I won't repeat. I'm trying to be a kinder, gentler Terry Wyce on the podcast. She had some words I won't repeat. But, all the hoopla, folks, it's summer, all right, in the northern hemisphere. It's going to get hot. It's going to get warm. I don't know. Do you feel that we, and when I say we, I'm being general, of course, as a society have really, we're not as tough as we used to be? I mean, our settlers, I was watching, if you have cable, which most people do, or some type of access to cable or streaming, there's a channel called Story Television. It used to be, I believe, the old History Channel Biography or History 2, and then it went to the Biography Channel. And I believe now it's been rebranded quite a while back as the Story or Story TV, Story TV, Story Channel, Story TV, something like that. And I was watching that day, as a matter of fact, when this actual alert came out about don't use all this energy. Oh my goodness, And they were doing a show called Year by Year. It's like a half-hour thing where they take a year in history of the world, and it was like 1938. It happened to be 1938. And they were talking about the incredible heat wave throughout the country, and they showed, people out in Nebraska were sleeping outside of their complexes and buildings in tents because of the intense heat that has been going on for the past 7 days with temperatures in the 90s, well into the 90s, and lowering into the 80s at night. And that's another, folks, my opinion, I'm not a scientist. I don't have any, I don't have any, scientific papers to back this up. I'm just going to give you just something based on my own life experience. When I was growing up, even as a youngster, all right, we had heat waves. My folks didn't have air conditioning early on, okay? And we had heat waves and things where we were sweating pounds off, all right? I must have lost, pounds by the week back when I was a youngster, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. You'd draw the curtains during the day to keep the heat out for the greenhouse effect. And at night, you would open up those curtains, put a fan in the window fan. That's why they sold these things called box fans or window fans. You would put them in your window, and you would, pull in that cool air in the evening to cool you down. The ceiling fans weren't that prevalent in homes at the time. They were more of a real luxury before they became mainstream in a lot of homes. And you would use those window fans to push air around and such, and people would go under the sprinkler and squirt themselves with the hose and all that kind of stuff, pools, and go to the beach when I was growing up to cool down, go to places that had air conditioning, like certain stores back in the day. And a lot of stores didn't even have air conditioning back in the day, if my memory serves me right. So it's something that, this is nothing new, folks. I mean, I don't know, I think there's maybe a lot of hoopla being much ado about nothing, as they say. And I know some of you out there are probably shaking your head right now saying, well, Terry, there's scientific fact that the earth is warming. But I would digress that the earth also cools too. I mean, you can go over and take a look at that thing called the Grand Canyon, and you'll see layers of the, I don't know what type of rock it is, bedrock, sediment rock, whatever. But as the canyon goes down, you can see, different times of when the earth was hot and cold. I have heard that there is a correlation between the space between the layers of rock. Same thing with trees, the rings on a tree, how damp or moist that year or decade was. You can do that by older trees that have fallen, and you slice them in half and look at the core of the tree itself too. You can tell a lot about the environment that tree experienced going on decades and what have you. And I don't know, maybe it's just me. There seem to be quite a few people that agree with me that there's just not enough evidence at this point to run around that the sky is falling. And I know, again, some of you out there are going to say, hey, Terry, look at the intensity of these storms. They had blizzards back for hundreds of years. They've had, there was a great dust storm that went across the United States back, I believe, in the either 1800s or late 1800s or early 1900s, a great dust storm that swept a cloud that started west and went east and, pretty much darkened the country. Many, many people lost their lives and animals as well, and great damage and cause of, loss of life. It wasn't the end of the world. There's been earthquakes. There's been tidal waves. There's been droughts. There's been great flooding and things like that. It's just part of life, my friends, and the natural ebb and flow of things and what we're living through. I've experienced times when we've had rainy seasons in the summer, and I've experienced time where it's been drier than anything. I can recall, the current home we're living in now, the second or third year we moved in here, we're in a well system out where I live, and it was dry, and a lot of people around that lived around us were running out of water, actually having to pay to have water brought in by the tanker full to them so they could live. Fortunately, me and a couple of my neighbors were on a natural spring set where we've got all kinds of springs feeding into our system. And so we were fortunate, where we never ran out of water. We didn't go crazy and abuse it. We conserved. We were more mindful of our water consumption during that time. But we went almost, a couple months or so, 3 months where there was literally hardly any rain at all. And it was, it was in the news, but it wasn't Chicken Little, it's the end of days, the life is ending on this planet kind of news. I just think as we ebb along here, we're supposed to be more sophisticated. We're supposed to be more aware. We're supposed to be more informed. But are we really? I mean, I hate to use the term fake news, but golly whiz, folks, golly whiz. How many people use that term? Golly whiz. I mean, let's face it, folks. I mean, there's a lot of scare tactics going on out there in the news media. It's been proven again and again and again that you can look up and see a lot of false narratives, a lot of false news on all sides, okay? I guess you just have to take your news. Don't take it for granted. Don't just look at it and say, oh, yep, that's the way it is. You got to, I guess, be more informed now more than ever. And one would think in this day and age with all the technology, all the resources, we can see around the world. We can talk to someone around the world in a nanosecond. We can look at cameras from our comfort of our own homes from around the world, and we can look at cameras in outer space. All this information is available to the people in ways that throughout human history was never, ever available before. And yet, here we are. It seems like we're a less informed population than ever. Some might argue. I don't know. Whatever your opinion, if you get opinion on it, hey, tweet at me on Twitter at Terry Wyce, or leave a comment on the Facebook page under the show, or actually go to my website, wycethoughts.com, and you can do that and leave a comment under the comments section of this episode of the podcast. You're more than welcome to do that. Obviously, I welcome any and all opinions and variances on the topic of discussion here today. But I guess I've rambled on enough about that. Another big thing going on in the news, oh my gosh, looks like the Emmy Awards is going to be postponed if it even happens at all this year. That's supposed to be coming up in September, but we've got the ongoing writers' strike in Hollywood and now an actors' strike. They have joined forces, and the writers' strike, I think it's with that, if I'm understanding correctly from what I've read, is about pay, back pay, or the way their pay structure is set up currently, that they feel they're not being fairly compensated. And as far as the actors joining in with them, I believe the actors' main concern, the SAG, Screen Actors Guild, what their main concern is the emergence of AI, artificial intelligence, which seems to be rapidly accelerating at an exponential level here, where their likenesses and or voices are being used in ways that they don't give permission to. Now, as far as the actors go and their problem with AI, I understand where they're coming from. However, if I may play devil's advocate for a moment, a lot of people say you kind of sell your soul to the devil in Hollywood to make it. And, anyone who's made it in the business, you hear, just watch things online. You've heard a lot of horror stories of things that some of these actors and actresses had to do to get promoted in Hollywood and do things, from the casting couch. Need I say more about that? And other things. So, and the shady deals and the agents taking them for money and stealing their money, and even family members of actors and actresses stealing their money when they were young actors and, were maybe more naive. So there's that, signing bad deals and things of that nature. It's all over the entertainment industry, just not for actors as well. But with the emergence of this AI, or artificial intelligence, which is basically computer algorithms that, technologically we have advanced so far now where it's getting pretty good where you can't tell a real voice from a real human voice from a computer generated one. And James Cameron, Terminator, the Terminator guy, Skynet, need I say more, said he's warned us about this stuff back in the 80s, man. And my scary thought is, wow, what if, I hope our government does not turn this stuff over to the military, because you know what? We might have a Skynet situation where an artificial intelligence becomes self-aware and decides, you know what, the human race is a scourge. God help us if that ever happens, because we're in trouble. Because they can screw up our lives in so many ways and slaughter millions, just like James Cameron's sci-fi fantasy film and film series with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Linda Hamilton and the like portrayed. And that is scary in and of itself. But I understand where the actors are coming from, though, because, if you, let's say you go to work for an employer, I'm just going to try and lay it out in layman's term. You go to work at, let's say, I don't know, a Burger King. I'll just pick something national here in the United States and something that's probably known worldwide if you're listening around the world. If you go to work as a cashier at Burger King and they say, well, you might have to, work the fry machine, and you might have to work the register besides working the register, and you might have to clean tables and mop the floors and maybe clean the bathrooms. And you're like, okay, that's my job duties. But then all of a sudden you're driving down the street and you see your face on a billboard standing at the, checking someone out, or standing at the French fry machine, and your likeness is being used, and you didn't give permission for that. You didn't sign anything. You weren't informed. Okay, you weren't given due diligence in being informed. Hey, you come to work here, we may use your likeness. You didn't sign any kind of release, which is typically required legally. You have to, if someone's going to use your likeness, your voice, what have you. I've done that being a voiceover artist. I've had to sign a release when I've done projects for certain businesses that says, hey, we can use your voice, because you did this, e-learning project or training project for us, that you're giving up all rights, and you can't come back after us 20 years from now and say, hey, you're using my voice for that training session on how to mop a floor on the second level or what. You're paid for this, you're given whatever compensation for this. You're up and out, okay? And so you have to know and be given due consent. You have to give consent, and you have to be duly informed of what your rights may or may not be. And if there's ever a question of that, my friends, please consult a legal person, an attorney. If you ever have a question on anything in life as far as legalities go, whether it's from an employer or what have you, I implore you, definitely seek legal counsel. I know people say, lawyers, I hate lawyers, they're scum of the earth. That's what they're there for. That's what they went to school for. Granted, some of them are not the most ethical people, as we have found out throughout history. However, that's what they are there for, and that's what they are there to help with, is the simple fact of, hey, is this legal? Can they do this to me? Am I getting, screwed over here? Always reach out to the advice of counsel, I would say, if there's any doubt on something like that. But that's what the Hollywood actors, from my takeaway and information, is what they're primarily, oops, sorry about that if you heard that squeal on the mic. Like I said, we're having some board issues. My takeaway from that is that's what they're mainly ticked off about, is that their likenesses, as far as visually and or audibly, are being used in ways that they never consented to. So I certainly can understand their dismay and them being disgruntled. As far as the Hollywood writers, they just want, time to renegotiate a contract. And, from what I am led to understand, the Hollywood writers, that's a tough job. There's some pressure there, and granted, I know you'll say, well, they wanted to go into that form of work, Terry, just like you wanted to go into voiceover or sales, or this one wanted to, become a nurse or whatever. You've got to take the ups and downs and the challenges that come along with it. I get that. Granted, I understand all that wholeheartedly. However, what I'm stating is that if you knew from the onset what the parameters were, and if new technology in that comes along, well, there should be a more full disclosure and a renegotiating of how your likenesses or whatever is going to be used, and you should have some say in that conversation moving forward. So I understand the writers and the actors. I get it. And I side with them on this. Granted, Hollywood hasn't been producing really much quality content lately. We have to go to more independent sources, at least from what I've seen, because a lot of the stuff coming out of Hollywood is so computer generated anyway with the graphics. There's some of these action movies lately, let's face it, come on, they are so far out there. But I guess in another breath, you can say, hey, this is what we go to the movies for, is to escape, is to fantasize, is to take that trip away from reality, forget about the daily struggle and humdrum life-to-life troubles. So I get it. I get what they're saying with regards to that. But hopefully they'll get that resolved soon, because that's already starting to affect some things going down the road. And who knows, you might be seeing more independent creators prop up. This is, hey, if you're an independent creator out there, not in the Screen Actors Guild or the Writers Guild, maybe this, and they would call those people scabs because they're crossing over, a dispute between labor dispute, but maybe that's leaves an opening for some of the less known people out here, or the people that not in the forefront right now, to maybe be pushed forward and bring up some content that we might not have sought out in the past. Who knows? There's always some type of fallout when something like this happens. So hopefully they'll get that all resolved soon and figure all that stuff out. I'm hoping, at least. But anyway. We'll see what happens, I suppose. Thanks for spending some time with me today on Wyce Thoughts. I'm glad you were here. I hope this time was well spent for you as well as it was for me. I enjoyed myself. I hope you did as well. And remember, if you have any feedback, you can reach out and email me at mail, M-A-I-L, mail@wycethoughts.com. Don't forget to check out my website, terrywyce.com, W-Y-C-E, terrywyce.com. If you need any kind of voiceover work or voice acting work, whether it's your audiobook, your podcast, you want to create some stingers, intros, outros, what have you, if your organization needs some e-learning done, or if you're in a business and want to have some commercial audio done, I'm there for you. Check out the YouTube channel at Wyce Thoughts on YouTube and on Facebook.com/Wyce Thoughts as well. Until next time, my friend, like I always say, to see a change in the world, you have to be the change in the world you want to see. It all starts with you, the person looking back at you in the mirror every morning. Be kind to yourself, be kind to others, be kind to animals. And until next time, take care.